Thinking we're getting there. Yes, no, maybe. Oh, wow. We popped up hella quick. Okay. All right, folks. We'll be Cannon here for how the Frack We Got Here. Just bear with me just a few moments. We'll get started very, very, very soon. Sorry, guys. We're actually going to get started very soon. Just have to get some things out the way, and then from there, we are going to go with it. All right. So, with that being said, good morning, folks. Let's just go ahead and get into it. June 15th, 2019, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan on how the Frack We Got Here. We are literally taking the events of last week and also trying to make sense of it all. Just to let you know before we get started, this is an adult podcast, so things of in adult language and some things shown of graphic nature may be shown. So viewer discretion definitely is advised. For everybody else who's still here, welcome. All right, so got a lot to get into, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's first start this off with some good news. And I'm not talking about the good news that's inspirational. This might be slightly petty, but honestly, I think we all are going to smile a little bit right now.
Fierce public defenders is leaving the White House. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said yesterday she will step down after nearly 2 tumultuous years. Paula Reed is at the White House. Paula, what does her departure mean for Mr. Trump?
Good morning, Michelle. Here, the president is losing one of his longest-serving advisors and closest aides. Yesterday, the president announced Sanders would be leaving her, quote, service to her country, but many believe she did a disservice to her country by amplifying some of the president's most controversial claims.
The president is losing one of his most loyal soldiers.
We've been through a lot together, and she's tough, but she's good.
Sanders has been a fierce defender of the president.
When the president gets hit, he's going to hit back harder,
and helped shape the public face of his presidency by reshaping the role of press secretary, mostly by stepping aside and letting the president be his own communicator-in-chief. The White House briefing effectively died on her watch. The last one was 95 days ago.
The liberal media should be absolutely embarrassed by their behavior over the last 2 years.
Sanders frequently echoed the president's talking points.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction.
Her credibility has frequently been called into question, even by Robert Mueller, for defending the president's firing of James Comey.
The rank and file of the FBI had lost confidence in their director.
Sanders later admitted to special counsel investigators she had no basis for that claim, and it was made in the heat of the moment.
I said that it was in the heat of the moment, but the big takeaway here is that the sentiment is 100% accurate.
And there were many heated moments.
This is day after day after day, and it's not just the president. The only person that I see a war on is this president and everybody that works for him.
Behind the scenes, she faced death threats.
I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection.
Still, Sanders called her tenure the opportunity of a lifetime.
I've loved every minute, even the hard minutes. I have loved it.
Sanders is expected to leave her post in the next few weeks. The process is already underway to find her replacement. An official tells CBS News it is likely that replacement will come from outside the press office. Michelle.
That is actually right, folks. I wish I could make this up, but I just love how the fact they're trying to make Sarah Sanders this beacon of moral fiber. She was one of Trump's best employees. No, she really wasn't. She was the reason why press secretaries are going to be analyzed even worse. Because, well, let's be honest, she was terrible at her job. I mean, her whole job was not being press secretary, which, by the way, every press secretary under every other president, including Bush, never missed an actual press conference. She missed the last one we had was literally 95 days ago from her. So again, we are supposed to sit there and give her this grand send-off, and for what? She basically repeated everything the president said because the president watched Fox News repeat everything they said. So it amazes me so because a friend of mine pointed this out to me. He goes, "Well, Will, Trump said that she should be running for governor of Arkansas," and then I remembered about Sarah Sanders' hyphenated name, Huckabee. Yes, she is the daughter of confused Christian Mike Huckabee, who always blamed his religion for his views mostly toward the LGBTQ community. So I forgot that Sarah Sanders also is his daughter. So, good people of Arkansas, good people of Arkansas, whoever may be watching this podcast, do us all a favor. And just like the people of Kentucky, do us all a favor. Don't vote Sarah Sanders in. And people of Kentucky, get Terrell McConnell the fuck out. That's all I ask of you. But I just found it interesting that when it came to Sarah Sanders, it's like, we're celebrating her services. I'm like, what service? She is literally the epitome of what a lot of Americans think that a lot of teenagers do. They pretty much get a job they were unqualified for, they complain about the hours, and then when they don't want to work, they just leave and don't come back. She gets a hero's send-off for what a lot of teenagers and some lazy Americans are doing right now, which kind of tells you a lot about the way we view the workforce. But anyway, but again, that's probably going to be the one person out of Trump's cabinet that didn't get fired, replaced, or in prison. So hey, Trump, you won one battle. But aside from that, I did want to show this clip that's coming up about Jon Stewart. If you don't know who Jon Stewart is, he used to be the host of The Daily Show. Very funny comedian, but very active in the political scale, mostly for a bill that he helped with the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, which basically assists in the health care of those 9/11 first responders who are having a lot of physical ailments. And the bill itself was supposed to actually running out of money, and Congress has been slow about actually replenishing the fund. And so this is Jon Stewart. I'm going to play the whole thing. It's about 7 minutes, and the only reason I play it is because it needs to be heard exactly, not only that what Jon Stewart says about Congress, but what we all feel about it. So let me just go ahead and go into it.
Your indifference
cost these men and women their most valuable commodity, time. I can't help but think what an incredible metaphor this room is for the entire process that getting health care and benefits for 9/11 first responders has come to. Behind me, a filled room of 9/11 first responders, and in front of me, a nearly empty Congress. Sick and dying, they brought themselves down here to speak to no one. It's shameful. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it is a stain on this institution. And you should be ashamed of yourselves for those that aren't here, but you won't be. Because accountability doesn't appear to be something that occurs in this chamber. We don't want to be here. Lou doesn't want to be here. None of these people want to be here. But they are, and they're not here for themselves. They're here to continue fighting for what's right. Lou's going to go back for his 69th chemo. The great Ray Pfeiffer would come down here, his body riddled with cancer and pain, where he couldn't walk. And the disrespect shown to him and to the other lobbyists on this bill is utterly unacceptable. I used to get, I would be so angry at the latest injustice that's done to these men and women. And, you know, another business card thrown our way as a way of shooing us away. Like children trick-or-treating, rather than the heroes that they are and will always be. Ray would say, calm down, Johnny, calm down. I got all the cards I need. And he would tap his pocket. Where he kept the prayer cards. 343 firefighters. The official FDNY response time to 9/11 was 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That's how long it took for FDNY, for NYPD, for Port Authority, for EMS to respond to an urgent need from the public. 5 seconds. Hundreds died in an instant. Thousands more poured in to continue to fight for their brothers and sisters. The breathing problem started almost immediately, and they were told they weren't sick, they were crazy. And then, as the illnesses got worse and things became more apparent, well, okay, you're sick, but it's not from the pile. And then, when the science became irrefutable, okay, it's the pile. But this is a New York issue. I don't know if we have the money. And I'm sorry if I sound angry and undiplomatic, but I'm angry. And you should be too, and they're all angry as well. And they have every justification to be that way. There is not a person here, there is not an empty chair on that stage that didn't tweet out, never forget the heroes of 9/11. Never forget their bravery. Never forget what they did, what they gave to this country. Well, here they are. And where are they? And it would be one thing if their callous indifference and rank hypocrisy were benign, but it's not. Your indifference cost these men and women their most valuable commodity, time. And the idea that you can only give them 5 more years of the VCF because you're not quite sure what's going to happen 5 years from now, well, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure what's going to happen 5 years from now. More of these men and women are going to get sick and they are going to die. And I am awfully tired of hearing that it's a 9/11 New York issue. Al-Qaeda didn't shout death to Tribeca. They attacked America, and these men and women and their response to it is what brought our country back. It's what gave a reeling nation a solid foundation to stand back upon, to remind us of why this country is great, of why this country is worth fighting for. And you are ignoring them. Why this bill isn't unanimous consent and a standalone issue is beyond my comprehension. And I have yet to hear a reasonable explanation for why. It'll get stuck in some transportation bill or some appropriations bill and get sent over to the Senate, where a certain someone from the Senate will use it as a political football to get themselves maybe another new import tax on petroleum, because that's what happened to us in 2015. And we won't allow it to happen again. Thank God for people like John Field. Thank God for people like Ray Pfeiffer. Thank God for all of these people who will not let it happen. They responded in 5 seconds. They did their jobs with courage, grace, tenacity, humility. 18 years later, do yours. Thank you.
And damn, you can't say anything more beyond that. I mean, Jon Stewart, like I said, if you don't know who he is, he's actually been the guy, literally been campaigning a lot for these individuals in the 9/11 Fund. And with a speech like that to Congress, yeah, you're getting somebody's attention. And they did. About after that, the bill for the 9/11 victim funds did get passed. So that is some good news out there that those guys that actually did, that were a part of the first responders to 9/11 and that event are still going to be medically funded. So that's still great news. But that has made me wonder, hell, maybe I need to go to my maybe I need to go to my home state of Tennessee and start cussing folks out and really just laying out what we feel about it, and then just going from there would make sense. But again, what Jon Stewart actually did in that one is that he basically showed that there is a lack of activity among politicians, and that yes, they should be held to their feet to the fire. I completely agree to that, because you're asking people out there, mainly, especially in this case, first responders, to lay out their lives and their health on the line, and that when it's time for, they did their job, it's time for Congress to do its. And I agree wholeheartedly with it. That's why I want to show that clip, just because of how powerful that message really was. But I'm glad that bill actually did get funded. And like I said, those people are continuing to get the help they need, and that is actually a positive note out of that. But anyway, you've probably heard the next part where I sit there and said we have another war coming. Well, looks like they're trying to start it.
Tonight, the U.S. and Iran are trading accusations and escalating their rhetoric over who attacked 2 tankers in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. military released what could be damning evidence, aerial reconnaissance video, which U.S. officials say shows Iranian sailors removing an unexploded mine from one of the attacked tankers, apparently to hide Iran's involvement. And this photo showing where the alleged mine was placed. President Trump called in to Fox News to say the Iranians were caught red-handed.
Well, Iran did do it, and you know they did it because you saw the boat. I guess one of the mines didn't explode, and it's probably got essentially Iran written all over it.
But the Japanese owner of one of the tankers insists his vessel was attacked not by a mine, but some kind of fast-moving explosive, which is how rescue ships first reported the attacks.
All station. Motor tanker front Altair in fire. Most probably torpedo attack.
Iran says it was not involved. NBC's Ali Arouzi is in Tehran.
Iran is ruling out any talks with the U.S., blaming America for seriously threatening stability in the region. With so much animosity and an absence of dialogue, the odds of conflict by accident is increasing every day.
Tonight, tensions remain high. A U.S. military official said Iran was preventing tugboats from recovering one of the tankers.
And Richard, tonight we're learning about a different effort by Iran to target U.S. surveillance assets.
So, Lester, the U.S. military doesn't talk about it much, but there are a lot of drones flying around this part of the world. And officials tell us in recent days there were 2 incidents, one in which a Iranian-backed militia shot down an American drone over the Red Sea, and another in which the Iranians tried to fire on a drone but missed. So it shows the tension.
So again, okay, so basically a tanker was attacked in the Sea of Oman, and now the fingers are pointing out, which I'm sorry, from that video, it doesn't scream Iran ships and sailors removing a mine. All you see is a ship backing up, and it amazed me so that, like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm having flashbacks here. because historically, this is how the Vietnam War started. Misinformation. This is how we got stuck in Iran and Afghanistan and basically invaded those countries in false pretenses by saying that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and nothing was found. Misinformation. So when I hear about, the escalating tensions between us and Iran, and all it takes is one little bit of misinformation, and you already have a trigger-happy president that doesn't like Iran because his Saudi overlords don't like Iran. It doesn't take much to put American boots on the ground. So I worry because, like I said, I'm beyond draft age, so I'm good there. But I worry about the simple fact of the matter is we're not a war. I mean, we are a tired of war country because in our entire existence, there's only been 16 years of peace where we did have a war. But every other period in time, we've been involved in a theater of war. It gets to a point as when is enough going to be enough? I mean, does everything always got to be war? I mean, when you are still in Iran and Afghanistan nearly 2 decades later, no offense, why the fuck are we still there? That's the thing I don't get. I mean, we honestly have more military bases in Iraq than we probably do in most of Europe. That's saying a lot. And at the same time, Iran, we were actually having a nice, peaceful treaty with Iran under President Obama until President Cheeto decided to come in and say, let me undo everything the black guy did. And so now this little bit of information is going to possibly lead to some sort of military action. But another thing I never got of is when they sit there and say they shot down one of our drones. Why were our drones in the region to begin with? Would be my question. Because somewhere along the lines, there has to be accountability. And if we're literally spying on Iran, then let's just admit that we have. Because, hey, I mean, we did the same thing with Russia and China. They shot down our drones. Nobody bats an eye. Iran shoots down your drones. Oh, we must know what they're doing. No, sometimes we are not world police. We don't need to be involved in every goddamn thing is what I'm saying. But again, hopefully this does not lead to escalated conflict. I don't believe that we should be so quick to say Iran did it because the video really didn't show shit aside from a boat moving away. And at the same time, the owners of the tankers, which come from Japan, said that it was not Iraq, that it could have been something else. So I was there and say before we start the finger pointing, let's not go ahead and immediately pull for the guns. We're looking at you, President Cheeto. And speaking of President Cheeto, I always sit there and say it best. If you've read the Barr report, which is basically the Mueller report that's been redacted, there are multiple obstruction of justice charges that could be led against Trump in order to have him removed. And so I said that there were 17. Now there is 18 after watching the next video in which ABC was actually able to get an exclusive interview with Trump. And he said something midway through the video that really shouldn't be surprising, but at the same time should be a very big-ass warning.
President Trump with our George Stephanopoulos, the president talking about the race for 2020 and those new polls getting a lot of attention that show several Democrats ahead of the president in head-to-head matchups. Joe Biden with the biggest lead over the president. Tonight, the president saying those polls are untrue and telling George he has a strong case to make to the American people on why he should be reelected. And George asking the president if the Russians, if China have dirt on his opponent this time around, would he entertain it or would he call the FBI? Let's get right to George live at the White House tonight where this interview just wrapped up. George, good evening.
David, good evening. It was an extraordinary 48 hours. Access like we've never seen before to the President of the United States on Air Force One, in that presidential limo, the beast, and in the Oval Office where the president took on those polls he calls fake.
As we walked into the Oval Office, President Trump had already tweeted about new polls showing him behind the Democrats, clearly not happy.
Why does it bother you so much?
Because it's untrue. I like the truth. I'm actually a very honest guy. If I thought they were correct, I wouldn't be complaining at all. I understand that. It's like the witch hunt that goes on.
The Russia investigation, a topic he raised first and returned to again and again. As he spoke in the White House over on Capitol Hill, Donald Trump Jr. was arriving to testify again.
Are you here to correct your testimony?
Nothing to correct it.
Your son, Don Jr., is up before the Senate Intelligence Committee today. And again, he was not charged with anything. In retrospect, though,
by the way, not only wasn't he charged, if you read it, with all of the horrible fake news, I mean, I was reading that my son was going to go to jail. This is a good young man, that he was going to go to jail.
In June of 2016, just months before the election, Don Jr. received an email from a business associate promising dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russian government. Don Jr.'s response, "If it's what you say, I love it." The conversation led to a meeting in Trump Tower that included the president's son, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and a Russian lawyer. Don Jr. insists nothing came of it. And Special Counsel Robert Mueller concluded there was not enough evidence to charge a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia.
And then the report comes out, and they didn't even say, they hardly even talked about it.
Should he have gone to the FBI when he got that email?
Okay, let's put yourself in a position. You're a congressman. Somebody comes up and says, hey, I have information on your opponent. Do you call the FBI? I don't think.
Coming from
I'll tell you
Russia,
what,
you do?
I've seen a lot of things over my life. I don't think in my whole life I've ever called the FBI. In my whole life. You don't call the FBI. You throw somebody out of your office, you do whatever you do.
Al Gore got a stolen briefing book. He called the FBI.
Well, that's different, a stolen briefing book. This isn't a stolen. This is somebody that said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, let me call the FBI. Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
The FBI director says that's what should happen.
The FBI director is wrong.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI, if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
So let's get back to George tonight. George, it's very clear the race for 2020 is also on the president's mind. The tweets already trading attacks with.
All right, so I'm sorry. I was trying to stop the video after that point because I was doing this. This was my first reaction when I heard President Cheeto say, if an individual or a coalition or a group gave you information that literally came information that if they gave you dirt on somebody or a group or whatnot, would you take it? He goes, but yes, I would. My first response when I heard this, I almost wanted to go, and we have number 18. And if you're wondering why I'm saying number 18, I'm saying number 18, simply put, because if you've read the Barr report, which basically the Mueller report redacted, the Barr report basically showed 17 possible obstruction of justice acts the president has committed. By admitting that you would take information from a foreign dignity about dirt on your opponents is literally the definition of treason. So again, number 18. And people, and this is why I will sit there and say, how? I'm speaking to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, literally the two Democrats right now who are literally being the bridge holders for impeachment. You have this man on recorded media saying that he would accept foreign information if it was helpful to him. And then he was given an example. It said, well, Al Gore had a stolen dossier. He immediately called the FBI. Well, the FBI is wrong. You almost want to go, what the? You're looking at Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer like, when are you guys going to start impeachment? That is an impeachable offense. When a man turns around and tells you what he's going to do, and then is given an example of the appropriate process to do, and then he turns around and says, well, that process is wrong. And then he goes, he's like, I have good judgment. I've never lied. I'm a pretty decent, I'm a pretty honest person. No, you're not. By your first presidential term alone, you've said over at least 2,000 lies. Do you know how bad it is that You know how bad it is that news outlets keep up with every lie that you said? That means you're not pretty honest. You're pretty much full of shit. But I just can't say at this point. I don't get what's, and I said this is my last podcast about Democrats. The problem with Democrats, and like I said, I know I may have some Democratic views, but I don't consider myself a Democrat, and I sure as shit don't consider myself a Republican. That being said, Democrats, the reason why you guys always, you literally have smarter ideas than Republicans, but the reason why Republicans win is because of their unity. No matter good, right, or wrong, they stick with each other. But when you guys get in office, it's like the C parts. It's like this part versus this part. You're not working together, but somehow you're working together. And it amazes me so when it comes to impeachment, what the fuck are you waiting for? Nancy Pelosi's like, well, I'd rather see him in prison. Well, newsflash, honey, they can still get him. You can still impeach a president. Fuck the DOJ's opinion. It is not law. The DOJ's opinion is you cannot indict a sitting president. That is an opinion. Although at this point, William Barr is in the DOJ, and he still might be the president's man as far as trying to keep him out. That's being honest with you. But you cannot fundamentally ignore the fact that this president is trying to undermine everything that he's doing, at the same time causing so many crimes along the way that it amazes me so that between Pelosi and Schumer, I don't get it. It's like, you want him in prison? Sure. But impeach him. Start the impeachment process. I have been saying this for like the last 4 or 5 podcasts. Democrats either impeach, either begin the impeachment process, either begin the impeachment and actually show some action, or don't talk about impeachment no more and hopefully make it till the 2020 election. But you got to do one of the two. I am so tired of seeing these people on the fence. You see one side of Democrats saying, "Oh, we should move impeachments," but the two heads of the dragon, Schumer and Pelosi, are still sitting there saying, "Well, we're considering it." What the fuck is there to consider? You want to impeach the president? Go ahead and impeach the president. Republicans went up to Bill Clinton for a blowjob, which he admitted he had, which I still find which is still to me the most asinine of impeachment proceedings, that I lied about getting head in the White House, so therefore I shouldn't be president. There have been much more heinous offenses. But speaking of President Cheeto, which we're going to be on him for a little bit longer today, like I said, after he gave that about after he said that he would, that he would take foreign information, apparently he must have spoke to somebody, because then he said this.
On his 73rd birthday, President Trump reversing course, now saying he would tell the FBI if he was offered dirt on another candidate by a foreign entity.
Of course, you have to look at it, because if you don't look at it, you're not going to know if it's bad. How are you going to know if it's bad? But of course, you'd give it to the FBI or report it to the Attorney General or somebody like that.
The backtrack comes after the president got a barrage of criticism, including from a few Republicans, for saying this.
I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI.
Tonight, outraged Democrats arguing the damage has been done.
It's just shocking. It's disrespect for our country, disrespect for our Constitution.
On Thursday, Senate Republicans blocked legislation that would require campaigns to notify federal authorities if they are contacted by a foreign power, as the top Senate Republican aimed to downplay the controversy.
The case is closed. Why don't we move on?
The president is also making headlines tonight, disputing the testimony of his former White House counsel, Don McGahn, who told Robert Mueller that the president instructed him multiple times to have the acting attorney general remove this special counsel.
Now, the story on that, very simply, number one, I was never going to fire Mueller. I never suggested firing Mueller.
Tonight, a person close to McGahn telling NBC News the president's comments are fantasy land.
Tonight, the president just tweeted thanking top Republicans for blocking Democrats' efforts to pass tougher legislation on reporting damage.
So there you have it, folks. Apparently somebody went to Trump and said, "Motherfucker, are you trying to get impeached right now?" And pretty much told him, like, "No, you need to take back what you said." And it's like, well, how do you know if it's bad? Okay, for example, if someone comes to you and says, "I have dirt on so-and-so," why the fuck would you still look at it? Or you have a dossier that you can't explain, why would you open it? You know, and it's amazing. This is how little he knows. How little he knows of the policy is that he says, well, I will call the FBI or the Attorney General or somebody like that. No, genius. As you were possibly told during your campaign election, because during your election, you are given a set of rules and policies to follow. One of those is pretty blatant, which is if you are contacted in some way by some authority, then you are supposed to contact the FBI. You know, the department that you said was wrong, the director that you fired James Comey from the FBI. So again, it amazed me so how little that Trump does know. But then again, he has all these people to protect him. And this is why I point out the great state of Kentucky, because you guys have wonderful bourbon. So again, Kentucky, do us all a favor during midterms. Hand Mitch McConnell his walking fucking papers. Because, or at least call it a vote of confidence, because the state can call a vote of confidence in on its senator. But McConnell is doing his job right now, which is basically being Trump's wall. You know that wall Trump always wanted? Trump finally got the wall that he wanted. Trump, not the physical wall, but the wall of people. He has McConnell that will block down anything that comes through the Senate, which I think to myself is a massive abuse of power. He has Mnuchin in the IRS because Mnuchin will never release his taxes, despite a court order and a subpoena from the House with the Ways and Means Committee. So he's got that person there, and at the same time, you have William Barr, who is basically Trump's personal lawyer as AG, who will again turn down everything that comes away from this report, even giving out a redacted version of the Mueller report, although he is actually about to be held in contempt. So Trump's wall is actually intact. It's just a wall full of people protecting him and not the country he said he would. Hey, lied 2001 right there. But again, that alone is just crazy as far as he can say that. But then again, I'm reminded that he did say this during the election, that I could walk downtown in Times Square, shoot a person in the head in broad daylight, and nobody would blink an eye. And I'm starting to believe he's right. I am honestly starting to believe that he is getting to a point of where you just simply cannot ignore it. You really can't. But again, Democrats, do your fucking job. Either go after this man or go after him in mid-elections. But I will say this as one little small thing of comfort. The Simpsons haven't been wrong. Just saying. And you'll know what I'm talking about if you Google Donald Trump and Simpsons, you'll see exactly the scene I'm talking about. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I'm just saying they've never been wrong. Anyway, moving right along, this week has really brought a lot of police attention. In this case, this one is also my home state of Memphis. My home state of Tennessee, but this actually happened in Memphis.
Officers have been injured in Memphis during clashes with protesters. This happened after Memphis police shot and killed a man they say rammed into their cars, then got out of his car with a weapon. So details are just coming into our newsroom on this. CNN's Martin Savage has the very latest on this breaking story. What's happening, Martin?
Morning, Allison. Yeah, this all began when U.S. Marshals were attempting to make an arrest on a man who was wanted on several warrants. They did fatally shoot the man, and there was a crowd that gathered after the shooting in protest. Some people began throwing rocks. There were 25 officers that were injured in the chaos. Most of the officers, minor injuries, but there are at least 6 officers that were taken to hospital. There were 2 civilians, at least 2 civilian journalists that were injured in the melee as well. Here's the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation describing how the shooting occurred.
While attempting to stop the individual, he reportedly rammed his vehicle into the officers' vehicles multiple times before exiting with a weapon. The officers fired, striking and killing the individual. No officers were injured.
The TBI is continuing to investigate the shooting here. The mayor of Memphis is appealing for calm, asking for people not to react until they know all of the facts. But, John, it is going to be another very tense day in Memphis today.
And pretty much that exact situation. What was actually going on? Because, like I said, that was Wednesday night. The guy itself apparently did have warrants, And which it was just interesting where they said a lot from the police standpoint. He ran a police car. He had a weapon on his hand. But it was just what I took from that, honestly. I mean, like I said, I will never knock a law enforcement officer that does his job correctly. Be that as it may, the way the situation is at this point, because a lot of us, mostly black people, mostly black men, have been killed by police, especially in the last 2 years. And you're right, Derek, and thanks for watching, by the way. It's going to be a lot more cops getting hurt in the future. It's going to get to a point that if it's justified, it's justified. I understand that. But, and I say but, because what's going to wind up happening is, it's just like, the crowd doesn't see what the police sees. The crowd sees another black man getting gunned down by police. At that point, like I said, we're reaching a boiling point here. It's going to be a point that a lot of people are not going to take that anymore, regardless if it's justified or not. That's the reason why in Memphis you saw a whole bunch of black people really ready to whoop up on police. And this should be a warning about the nature of policing toward people of color. This should be a warning because, as my friend Derek just pointed out, people aren't taking it no more. Now this time it was rocks and whatnot. What's to keep people from actually exercising their Second Amendment rights and bringing guns, bringing different type of weapons? And I'm not wishing that, but at the same time, it's coming to a head. And the thing about it is, and it's funny, it's amazing how quickly when cops get in trouble, they have all the backup in the world, but they can also tell the narrative, simply put, because now the oppressing threat is gone. So they can spin the narrative however they want to. Not saying that what that guy did was right or wrong, but in the public's eyes, all they saw was another black man getting gunned down by police. Which in the same sense, where police always say, they want cooperation and whatnot, here's the problem with that. With the next video I'm about to show. You can't ask for cooperation if you basically do this.
The fucking car! You are gonna get out the fucking car right now! Get your fucking hands up! Get your fucking hands up! Get your fucking hands up! Get your hands up! Get your fucking hands up! I'm gonna fucking put a cat in your fucking
Who the fuck is that, man?
Get him out!
Police?
Yeah.
It doesn't open. I promise it doesn't open.
You're gonna fucking get shot! Get your fucking hands up! Get out the fucking car! Get out the fucking car right now! Yes, get out now! Get out the fucking car! You fucking hear it? Get out the fucking car!
Recording?
Yeah, I'm recording it.
Put your hands up. I don't give a shit. Put your hands up. Hands up.
I can't put my hands up. I'm fucking scared, man. I'm pregnant. It's overdoing shit. It's overdoing
Hey, break your feet. When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just undecided.
You're not complying with me.
Yes, I am.
When I tell you to do something, you fucking do it.
I am. I'm complying with everything, sir.
Hey, right now, shut your mouth. Get the other key down. No one else is in
What'd you guys just do? I didn't do anything, sir.
Are you okay? So, you can come get some. When I tell you to put your fucking hands up,
I can't put my hands up on that fucking baby, nigga. It's a fucking disgusting.
Put your hands.
Hey, hey! Whoa, sir, come down! What's going on here? Oh, fuck that shit. We live here. Attacking a lady, man? Really?
Put your child down.
She can walk. She's a baby.
And that's how y'all trick black people, huh?
Can someone just defuse the situation here? He just came out yelling, he didn't say nothing.
Yeah, he just came out screaming and hollering at her. He didn't have to come at her like that, man. That's ridiculous.
I was in the car with my baby.
Wow. Again, in this case, it's when is it going? Like I said, Derek, and Derek, thank you for that comment, but I'm going to reiterate exactly what you said. Unfortunately, it's going to be a lot more cops who are going to get hurt in the future, only because situations just like this. The kid probably, it's like we all, I mean, you have nieces or nephews, you have your own kids. We've all been there where you've literally had to sit there and say, hey, because, kids will grab stuff and walk off. It happens. I see my nieces and nephews do it all the time. I have to sit there and watch them when I go into stores, only because they're small, they're curious, they're going to reach out for stuff. It's our job as parents, uncles and aunts and whatnot, just to make sure, hey, if they grab something, either put it back or make sure it gets paid for. It's honest mistakes. And again, it seems in this case, the story, the child picked up a Barbie doll. How much are Barbie dolls? 75, 95 cents, not even a buck. And of course, the cop used we're not even going to say excessive. Because excessive would be saying it nicely. You drew guns on a couple because a Barbie doll was reported stolen. I want to sit there and think about that for a second. You went guns drawn, yelling at them, telling them that you're going to put a cap in their head, you're going to shoot them because of a Barbie doll? At this point, I'm sorry, there are some people that just shouldn't be cops. You shouldn't be cops if you can't look at a situation and go, you know what? It doesn't require me pulling my gun. At the same time, it's 99 cents. Why am I following this couple? It's a Barbie doll, right? Right. That should have been the response. Honestly, it should have been the response of, well, what got stolen? A Barbie doll. That's it. I was like, okay, well, hey, you gotta get Barbie. They got a free Barbie. The kid got a Barbie doll. Open and shut case. Hey, the store's insured. Their profit margins are not going to be affected severely off of one Barbie doll. So it is amazing to me where you see the couple, and it's like, and a lot of people don't understand this, and a lot of people, and I'm going to be really honest about it, a lot of people who aren't black, and a lot of people who aren't black and a man who are just driving a car, you will never understand I won't say the fear, because I don't care who you are. You can sit there and say you're afraid, not afraid. I'm going to be honest, that fear is always there. You never know what's going to happen when you're interacting with law enforcement. You don't know what's going to happen. And I would be lying if I said I did. Because keep in mind, I'm a big dude. I'm sitting down right now, but I'm a big dude. And I have locks. Although the front part's fucked up. But don't really focus on this right now. But think about that. I'm a black dude with locks. And I can be driving around my car, and to me, I might be, obeying the laws and whatnot, but to an officer, I may be another target. And that's what goes to the mind of a black man. At the same time, when we get pulled over, we don't know what the fuck's gonna happen these days. We've seen what happens when we've seen what happens when you comply, whether or not you do. We've seen what happens when, you try to do everything right. But at the same time, you have police out here who will literally go for the gun when it comes to us. Even in situations that don't even require lethal force, they will still pull the gun. Because there are a lot of cops out there who simply put, just basically want to shoot us. tell me I'm wrong. That's all I got to say. Tell me I'm wrong in that situation. Like I usually tell people, if I'm wrong about that, please let me know. And I know a lot of people cops who are law enforcement, they've always said, yeah, we've got a lot of guys who shouldn't be on the force anymore. Okay, would you go on record and say that? No. Even though that's their feeling, they won't come out publicly and sit there and say, yeah, there's a lot of guys on the force who do not need to be there anymore. Because they just have this code of silence that goes with the badge that makes no sense. Especially in the sense where, if they just, when the guy did nothing wrong, the guy did nothing wrong. Like, for instance, in this next video I'm about to show, which also was this week as well, which seems to be a sounding term with cops. But this just happened, and the guy was just walking by.
It's disturbing because it depicts a police state. It reveals a culture the commissioner's trying to eliminate.
Upon viewing it, I found it to be very disturbing. And at that part, I knew exactly what I was seeing and what course of action needed to be taken.
Harassed! The police body camera video shows a man walking by Sergeant Ethan Newberg as he conducted a warrant check. The man said something about harassment and placing the suspect on a wet sidewalk.
Why don't you mind your business? You need to stop that man sitting on the ground. You got him? You got him? I'm not running no. Sir, get off me, sir. Put your hand behind your back. Sir, I can't. Put your hand behind your back. There you go. He's putting it back. I can't do nothing, yo. Y'all can't. What the is you touching me for? I didn't do nothing to you. The freedom of speech. He's under arrest, yes. For what? For what? What am I under arrest? Just go to jail. Take your charge like a man. For what? Take your charge. What am I going to jail for? Because you don't know how to act.
The man is charged with disorderly conduct and taken to central booking. The state's attorney's office declined to prosecute. Other officers are now on the scene. One tries to calm Sergeant Newberg.
Don't ever interfere with. What did you say? I didn't hear you. Just relax. Just go. Hey, leave my scene. Go. Leave. Then don't you ever tell me how to do my job.
Sergeant Newberg can be heard after the incident telling colleagues he told the officer, "Take your hand-holding nonsense somewhere else. This is police work. This ain't no candlelight vigil."
It's no secret we have a lot of work to do to rebuild our relationship with our community and to regain their trust.
The man stopped in the first place did not have an outstanding warrant. Sergeant Newberg tells the man, "I'm going to let you go. You owe me." Reporting from the Bishop Robinson.
So again, this is why I sit there and I'm saying, again, if you're a bystander, you see a guy getting arrested, and I mean they're just really working him over, and he goes, "Man, you don't gotta do him like that." I mean, he's not resisting. And then this guy gets out of his car just to go get the person who just sat there and told him you didn't have to hit him like that, and then you arrest him for disorderly conduct. I'm with that. I'm on that point. I'm like, wait a minute, you're arresting me for what? For saying that I'm criticizing how you're doing your job? That's disorderly conduct. I mean, if that is not the weakest reason and literally abuse of power out there, again. This is why I sit there and say this. This is what's going to happen going forward. That just like you saw in Memphis, and don't get me wrong, Memphis is a nice city. A lot of good people there. But that little microcosm of what you saw, that's going to start happening in every person of color area in the U.S. Because like I said, it's going to get to a point to where folks aren't going to take it anymore. And it's going to get to a point where a lot more than just 25 cops are going to get injured. Because, again, y'all ain't the only ones that have means and ways. And I'm not wishing this type of violence. I am not. But I am simply saying, as long as the police go unchecked, this is the road it's bound to be on. And that's sad. Because, again, it's one of those times where I just sit there and think to myself, do I really want to be a parent? I mean, I love being an uncle, but it's like, God damn, do I want to be a parent and bring a child up? And, if they're a son, if they're a boy or a girl, I have to sit there and tell them that they have to worry about everything else out in the world, but the most dangerous thing you have to worry about is a guy with a badge with the words officer on it. I mean, I don't want to say it, but it's getting to the point you have to say it these days. But at the same time, I would recommend this before I go into the next story. Is just that for my people of color, I've always said this before, and I learned this lesson a long time ago from a very wise black man who was a lawyer. He said the police are going to go after you if you are ignorant of the law and if you immediately get scared. He told me some very good advice that I'm going to always say when it comes to that. Wherever you live, learn the laws. Learn the laws, learn the regulations. Basically be a paralegal, and it will help you. And I'll tell you why. Because a cop has to tell you why they're arresting you. They have to give you probable cause if you get searched. They have to do all these things. And you necessarily do not have to provide any information to them unless you're under some sort of suspicion or warrant or possible charge. And trust me, when I tell you that worked, that actually is very helpful. Because I've had cops go to me, it's like, well, let me see your ID. I said, for what? What for? They have to tell you. And if they don't tell you, you don't have to comply. And that's the one thing about law enforcement, that myth that you always have to comply. No, you don't. If you know your rights and you know what they can and can't do, my friend, that is empowerment. And that's the one thing I want y'all guys to take away from this. Empowerment and honestly collaboration with others, because that is what helps us. Because Thurgood Marshall said it best. The law is your weapon if you know how to defend it. And that is the truth. And that's what I said. The law is basically on the law is on, even though I know the law itself is skewered. I mean, completely skewed and screwed up. But if you get your mind right on the laws that here in your home state or wherever you live, as long as you know those laws and then you know what the police can and can't do, my friend, that will help you out tremendously, because you don't always have to comply immediately. Observe the situation, and trust me, I hate to say it, but I used to always tell people, your first response is to get angry. I know, I've been there. That'd be in the same time, it's along the lines of you have to analyze the situation, because the one thing a lot of these so-called cops out there will do is they like to aggravate you. They like to rile you up. They want to get you into a tense moment so they have probable cause. A lot of people always say it best. Remain calm. Because you know why? It ticks them off. And also, one last thing before I get in the story. If you don't have any type of surveillance equipment in your car, like a dash cam or something that records, my friend, please, oh please, when you get the chance, invest about $100 or $200 and get one put in your car. Trust me, when you get pulled out of traffic court, or if you get pulled in any situation with law enforcement, you don't tell them everything in the car is being recorded. I mean, they have body cams, but that can be argued. But like I said, let the law be your weapon, because that helps you out a lot more than anything else. Take it from me, because it's gotten me out of a lot of situations with police. But I will still sit there and still say, fuck the police. But anyway, moving right along though, because my home state just seems to be the focus of attention for a lot of shit. You've probably already seen this about a Tennessee preacher who was actually a former cop that had some interesting words to say about the LGBTQ community.
I'm not surprised by any of this. I didn't desire any of this, but again, I don't think I'm anything special.
Outside All Scripture Baptist Church, before a weekly scheduled service, Pastor Grayson Fritz faced questions about a recent sermon where he called for governments to arrest, try, convict, and execute people within the LGBTQ community. Fritz standing by his sermon.
It's totally separate, because if I'm employed by the sheriff's office, then if they came into the sheriff's office, obviously they're allowed there. You understand what I'm saying? I am over this. I am over this church. I am the head of this church. And I say who comes or goes, and those people are not permitted to join, those people are not permitted to attend.
Fritz is no longer on active duty as a KCSO detective. Speaking to the congregation of 16 today, he doubled down on his anti-LGBTQ beliefs. Meanwhile, LGBTQ activists are responding.
This is also where my friends are, where my whole community is, and there's someone talking about executing my friends and family.
Sterling Field works with the Tennessee Equality Project. He says this kind of speech is dangerous.
So at best, people just feel unsafe, and at worst, they actually get risen to action.
And of course, there's always one guy, and this is the one thing, and I take this back because I know there's a lot of religious people, a lot of religious my friends are religious and watch this podcast, and this is not, and I always point this out, this is not a representation of religion, because yes, religion itself can skewer and it can be corrupted and it can be manipulated. However, this guy is just a douche. I mean, let's just be honest. He's citing that, that all, people who are different as far as preference should be hunted down and executed. That's hate speech. Because you recite it from a pulpit doesn't make it any different than hate speech. And at the same time, it is amazing to me how he seems to be completely okay with it. And I just thought to myself, how is it that and I should have known this initially when he sat there and he said, well, this is my church. I decide who comes. I decide who goes. I decide who's welcome here and who's not. Last time I checked, the church doesn't really have restrictions on who they allow and who don't they allow. At the same time, he believes that he's in the right, and he's doubled down on it. And my thing is, and I've said it best, love is love. I mean, if you really, not to get religious, because my thing is, because former preacher's kid, so there's not a lesson in the Bible that I don't know about. But at the same time, it gets to a point to where there is such thing as free will. There is such a thing as you can choose to believe or choose not to believe. You can be religious or agnostic or atheist. You can do any of those you want to do. That being said, it doesn't take religion for you to just be a decent damn person. At the same time, if it's not your preference, cool. Move the fuck along. You don't have to sit there and call for the genocide of people that are just different than you. At the same time, you're doing it from a pulpit. And trust me, he's not the only one. There's a lot of other preachers that do the same doggone thing this man does. Except they don't call for the execution of these people, but they turn around and downplay it and say that, this is judgment, this isn't God's will, and all this crap. That being said, it's more dangerous because, let's be honest, the South is the Bible Belt. More people get their influences from church than anything else. Most. So, it is amazing to me that the message that gets put in the pulpit isn't one about peace and love and acceptance and collaboration. It's more along the lines of fire and brimstone, and that, this is wrong and that they should be condemned in stone. And I just think to myself, and this is why some religions just destroy people. But again, good old Tennessee, progressively backwards. But moving right along, guys, if you are in retirement or getting to retirement, I have some very concerning news for you, especially if you have 401ks. The House recently passed this bill right here, which is basically the setting up every community for retirement enhancement act, which sounds like it's really good, but it's really not. Reason being, it raised the retirement age up to 72 from 7.5, which I'm gonna be honest, who the fuck's age is 70.5? That's the one thing I wanted to point out. But anyway, so they raised the retirement age up to 72, and regarding IRAs will be drastically changed around to where at this point it would actually be reduced. At the same time, coming to small employers, small businesses would actually reduce if they have the match saving plans. They would actually be taxed. So if your company has a max plan, which is basically whatever you put in, they match it. That might go away because those are being taxed higher. So for a lot of businesses that have that might go out the window. So I hate to say this, although Social Security, a lot of people, and I stress this for all those who are watching this podcast, please, oh please, don't let Social Security and 401k be your parachutes. Because at this point, with the way the stock market is, because it definitely is fluctuating and things of that nature, you just want to make sure that you have additional revenue streams. And Trust me, they're out there, and I would highly suggest people to go into those, because at this point, that retirement age at this point is bound to go up at least another 4 or 5 years. The retirement age, the funny part is, 20 years ago, the retirement age was 62. Now, moving forward, we're up to 72. I can almost guarantee in 4 years, it's going to be pushed 75. So, for all those thinking that 401k is going to be there, that 401k still might be unable to reach at this point for a lot of us. Which Derek, you beat me to it. Which Derek, in this case, we beat me to on that. You work. I mean, the whole idea is working until you die, and that's just unregulated capitalism, which I could go into, but I'm not, because that's a winded conversation. What do you say? Yeah, it's my state. I call Tennessee progressively backwards, because it is. I mean, you would think for us to be the Athens of the South that we should be able to move forward. We should be able to set the pace. Nope, we go backwards. You know why? Because for reasons beyond my comprehension, it's just like we have idiots. We definitely have crooks. We have racists in the Tennessee legislature. I said it best. At least 60% of Tennessee's legislature might as well be wearing KKK hoods. For all those that live here, you know what I'm talking about. When you say, Derek, hell, black people don't make it out of the 60s. Yeah, I mean, life expectancy for us is definitely that. You're right about that. But again, guys, that's what I was stressing about when I was going to go into my other podcast, Off Limits, where I talk about additional revenue streams. Because trust me, in this day and age, you need to do that. Because waiting until the end for your 401k and Social Security, unless you just happen to luck up and win the lottery, and even that is far few in between, you definitely need to have additional revenue streams and basically make your money work for you, and not the vice versa. But anyway, that's a whole other thing we'll get into later. Speaking of that, Kellyanne Conway, for all those that don't know, which we already knew about this, violated the Hatch Act. And this is basically what it's about.
And more breaking news out of Washington for one of the president's longest and closest advisors. Just moments ago, the Office of the Special Counsel releasing a statement saying counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, should be fired for repeatedly violating the Hatch Act, a law prohibiting executive branch employees, the president and vice president would be exceptions, from engaging in political activity while speaking in an official capacity. Kristen Welker is handling this bombshell. Kristen?
Well, Andrea, we are getting that statement now from the OSC, the federal watchdog agency. Let me read you part of it. They say Kellyanne Conway violated the Hatch Act on numerous occasions by disparaging Democratic presidential candidates while speaking in her official capacity during television interviews and on social media. Now, they also cite some of her comments during the 2018 special election for Senate in Alabama. Remember, that involved Doug Jones. Not surprisingly, the White House firing back, defiant, saying this: the Office of Special Counsel's OSC Conway are deeply flawed and violate her constitutional rights to free speech and due process. Others of all political views have objected to the OSC's unclear and unevenly applied rules, which have a chilling effect on free speech for all federal employees. Translation: doesn't seem like at this point the White House has any intention of following the OSC's recommendation that Kellyanne Conway should be removed. Of course, Conway was one of the key figures during the Trump campaign, and then she was brought on to the White House as special counsel to the president. But again, yet another controversy now looming over this White House today.
So for all those that don't know what the Hatch Act is, so the Hatch Act basically is saying in so many words, if you are a part of the administration, you cannot do advertisements, opinions, or basically not repeat anything but the facts. Of course, anybody that's watched Kellyanne Conway knows that she's done the complete opposite. She has actually violated the Hatch Act on multiple occasions. This is supposed to lead to basically her being removed from the White House. But basically, because she's Donald Trump's special person, we're not going to see that happen anytime soon. And it's amazing when it comes to the White House that they'll immediately lash out at anyone that is basically doing their routine job and saying they're not doing their job. No, genius. They are basically telling you that this person, again, which is the Trump administration, which again shouldn't be surprising about The way he's running it, it should not be. We honestly should not be surprised that, for the simple fact of the matter, the way he is running this entire campaign, this term, I should say, is just that he basically has a lot of people that are either going to protect him or basically going to influence. Either way, breaking every constitutional law that we have out there. So as much as I like to see her get her walking papers, it may not happen. So again, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, we're waiting on you. Another thing I did want to point out, though, before we get to the next to last of our stories, is just that this actually was happening, actually should have happened, will happen next Wednesday, I should say, that Danny Glover and Tanisha Coates are going to testify at a subcommittee on slavery reparations. Now, you've probably heard about slavery reparations multiple times. President Obama, on his last days in his second term, did talk about the implementation of reparations, and at the same time, it was actually mentioned that reparations could actually be possible. And at this time, they is still being discussed. While, like I said, Glover and Coates are going to basically testify. Coates was actually the guy who actually did the research about it, and says that it is possible to complete this. Now, the funny thing I've always said about this is, no matter what, black people are the only race. Argue with me if you want to. Black people are the only race out there that we have yet to be given our compensation. Now, a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, that's your ancestors, that's not you. How are you going to do this? Is everybody black going to receive something? Or how is this going to be done? Who can trace what? The problem is, all that's noise. Because, especially as for a black person, whenever I hear a black person saying it, I question them. I'm like, so let me get this straight. So you do know about Auschwitz, right? They look at me and say, Auschwitz. I'm like, yeah, Auschwitz. The place where Jews were basically killed, where genocide happened. Oh, well, that's not my people. Well, of course it's not your people, but you do know that they were compensated, right? Or you know about the Native Americans, Trail of Tears? You do know Native Americans are considered sovereign citizens, and they actually are not adept to taxes, but they were given lands and whatnot, albeit it wasn't enough. Because again, they had genocide happen. They were basically systematically trying to be wiped out, but they were compensated, not to the area where they should be. I can argue that people can argue that. I say I'm on the other side. They haven't gotten enough, but they got compensation. So again, where it comes to the whole idea of black people receiving slavery reparations, I've always asked this question: why are so many people the fuck against it? I mean, this country was raised off the backs of slaves. Slavery, post-slavery, for almost 400 years was recognized, and in so many ways, the South and the North, East and West, the U.S. as a whole was transformed by that. You can still see shades of it everywhere. At the same time, the one group of people out there who literally and figuratively are still affected to this day is us. And not in a positive way. It is still affecting us to where we are still carrying the same burden. Now, we might not have on the quote-unquote chains, but at the same time, what has affected us? I mean, not just slavery. I mean, think about the systematic racism, the destruction of the family black household, the fact that the court system is definitely against people of color. Forget the fact that the family court system is designed to separate black families. I can keep going on and on and on about the destruction of our people. But when reparations come up, it is amazing to me how immediately it gets shot down. Oh, this can't be done. You guys don't deserve it because you don't know if you come from slaves or not. It is amazing to me how quickly they can come up with possible instances of why this shouldn't occur versus looking more into it and saying, why hasn't it been done? So like I said, I'm going to actually keep up with that story as far as next Wednesday and just see what happens. I know it's a subcommittee thing, and I really hope it gets attention. I really hope it gets traction, because this forces people to look at that little uncomfortable chapter of U.S. history and say, yes, at one point you basically decided to treat us. We were no better than the animal. I mean, the animals that y'all put us to got treated better than we did, our ancestors did. So again, I'm hoping that honestly gets traction. It needs to. Because there's nothing wrong with reparations. It's not like the money's not there. And it's not like, you know what? You can do a blanket reparations. You can. And it's like, well, all these people are going to identify as black and whatnot. Okay, then use that federal funding that you get from the Pentagon, that you gave to the Pentagon as a blank check. Use it to trace genealogy. Simple. But again, when it comes to black folks, I don't expect the government to basically get off their hind end and start doing things at full speed. What you said, Derek, tell them to go to Montgomery, Alabama, to the lynching center, and they will see. Oh, yes. Oh, the lynching center in Alabama. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're definitely right about that. But again, that's one of those things I just hope gets traction. And speaking of things that get traction, you probably heard me say about universal basic income. The reason why I say that is because, well, basically technology is becoming more automated, and the simple fact of the matter is that certain jobs are going to be disappearing. So you probably heard me talk about universal basic income a few podcasts back. Here's basically how it would work. And this is a test run. I always said it best. People always say, so we should just give people money give people money free and clear. Yeah. See what happens when you do that.
Is in the mail. Technology is changing the kinds and number of jobs that we have in this economy. So there's a push to give people who lose out a guaranteed minimum income. But how big would that check be, and who would it come from? Questions for Lee Cowan to answer in our cover story.
Sometimes a sign in a window can be a sign of the times. And the one emblazoned outside Cafe X in San Francisco says it all. Robotic coffee bar. Now, we've heard for years that robots are coming for our jobs, eventually. And maybe that's why no one here seemed particularly surprised at being handed their machine-made macchiato. That said, it is pretty remarkable. This one-armed barista can crank out about 120 drinks an hour, with few, if any, mistakes. If you're lucky, you might even get a wave. It's not a bad-looking future, unless you're a human barista, that is, in which case, this all might have you feeling a little insecure about your job.
The best estimate is about 30% of all jobs that people now do will be lost to technology. But most of those will be replaced by new jobs. The real problem is that the new jobs won't pay as much as the jobs that are lost.
Robert Reich was the labor secretary under President Clinton. Just like he says, even at Cafe X, there are humans being paid to work alongside technology. But a seismic shift is coming, warns Reich, that will force us to look at work in a whole new way.
Work gives structure and meaning to people's lives, and if we don't have to work, are people going to become philosophers, painters, artists? Are they going to be involved in their communities, do voluntary work, or are they just going to sit around watching television?
And we really don't know that answer, right?
We don't know.
What we do know is the income disparity in this country will likely only grow. And that has some suggesting a radical idea: universal basic income, a guaranteed wage for everyone, working or not, no strings attached.
There are all kinds of mysteries and potential flaws with regard to universal basic income, but it's inevitable. We're going to have to seriously consider universal basic income.
It's nothing new. Thomas More saw it as part of his fictional utopia as early as the 16th century. Richard Nixon once flirted with the idea. But perhaps its most eloquent spokesman was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Now, one of the answers, it seems to me, is a guaranteed annual income, a guaranteed minimum income for all people and for all families of our country.
On the face of it, this notion of just giving people free money, it sounds pretty simple and it sounds pretty attractive.
Mm-hmm. The problem is it's not free. There are trade-offs. In order to finance something meaningful as a basic income for truly poor people would require us to find a significant amount of additional revenue. Where would we find that?
Professor Laura Tyson teaches economics at UC Berkeley and says even if every other social safety net program was cannibalized to pay for it, the math still won't add up.
Let's just take a simple example. $10,000 a year, 300 million people. That's $3 trillion.
$3 trillion.
$3 trillion. The budget is about 4. So that's 3/4 of the entire federal budget.
A number of places have tested the idea, on a much smaller scale, mind you. But so far, economists say none of those tests has been scientifically rigorous enough to determine much of anything. Which is why a lot of people are now looking at Stockton, California.
Growing up, my goal was to leave Stockton and never come back, actually.
There's a new mayor here, Michael Tubbs, just 26 when he was elected, having gotten the job based in part on his promise to improve the economy.
25% of our population lives in poverty, but I would argue that another 25 to 30% are just one paycheck away.
He thought, what if he could provide that one extra paycheck? A payout not generous enough to encourage people to stop working, but big enough to give some financial stability.
I'm not saying give everyone a Mercedes-Benz or give everyone a yacht or give everyone a private jet to travel to meetings to. I'm saying give everyone an income floor so that they're able to make decisions to provide for themselves and their families.
He partnered with the Economic Security Project, an organization chaired in part by Chris Hughes, one of the co-founders of Facebook, who's written extensively about the basic income idea. Starting this fall, his group will underwrite an 18-month experiment in Stockton that will give $500 a month to about 100 families and see what they do with it. Tubbs knows it's not without its risks.
It's no strings attached. You don't know and have no control over what people will do with the $500.
Luisa Castañon has a pretty good idea.
It would put a little bit of relief on our stress, you know, let us breathe a little bit. I don't even remember the last time I took my kids to the movies.
Have a good day.
She works for minimum wage at a Stockton elementary school as both crossing guard and playground monitor. She's not sure if she'll be one of the ones getting the money, but she hopes whoever does will take the experiment seriously.
Don't go blow it on something dumb. Use it to get yourself out of debt. Use it to get yourself ahead.
The plausibility of the basic income idea is still a matter of some pretty basic debate. It's a big investment with big unanswered questions. But for people like Mayor Tubbs, the economic challenges that lie ahead may be even bigger.
I want answers to these questions. I want to really be able to say, like, no, I tried this in my city and this is what happened.
Good or bad?
Good or bad, but I, being an internal optimist and knowing the folks in my city, I'm very confident that it's going to be good.
Now, thanks for guys for still watching. I know it was a little bit long, but that's actually one of the things that I am actually supporting of is a universal basic income. Now, just like the video says, it is literally a no strings attached, country funded, to where they're giving people money for various reasons. Now, it's not without its risk. They are true about that. But here's the thing. As automation grows, you can see the job losses already happening. I mean, factories are moving toward countries that actually have a lower rate as far as labor goes. I mean, you can already see that a lot of our imports are actually coming from overseas. At the same time, it's going to come to a point where jobs are not going to be as available. And just like they said, whatever jobs are left are not going to be barely above the minimum wage, which a lot of people still are not at $15 yet. So, that being said, there has to be a suggestion. Now, I do kind of disagree a little bit with the UC Berkeley professor because she said that the budget is $4 trillion. The budget itself is actually double that. She's actually speaking about what's available as far as on a fiscal year, which she didn't mention, by the way. Because case in point, the Pentagon gets well over $2 trillion every year. $2 trillion. You know, we can either, and it's been argued, we can actually give the Pentagon $2 trillion every year. that same $2 trillion could send every American to college on a full 4-year ride. Think about that. $2 trillion for military bullshit, or you can turn around and send everybody to college. So the universal basic income is not beyond the fact of crazy, but eventually it's going to have to come to a head because we have unregulated capitalism, and you can tell it is because there's so many mergers and acquisitions and things of that nature are going, that the only ones that are really winning are the businesses and corporations. So you're going to have a lot of people, which hopefully not in the near time near future, but it's starting to head that way. But you're going to have a whole lot of people who just can't find work or can't find work in their field. So a basic income is going to wind up being necessary. And just like the mayor said, you don't have to give people $10,000, $15,000 a month. You don't have to do that. You could. Your budget does ask for that. But it's just like he said, you can give enough to where someone could sustain living conditions. Like maybe not 10,000, what about 2,000? What about 1,000? What about something that's just added? Because a lot of people, unless if you were still too young to remember the Bush era, Bush 2.0, remember the stimulus checks? Again, and I argue this, depending on who you are, whether you got, I think the stimulus checks were, I think they were 1,500, something like that. 1,500 to 2,000, let's just use that range. So every able-bodied American got a stimulus check for $1,500, $2,000. And that was hands-free. We didn't pay taxes on that. You got that as a check, albeit if you didn't have any child support or anything else that hindered you from getting it. But that was an experiment in itself to basically have Americans spend. Because economic history will tell you, if you invest in the middle and lower classes, the economy does better. And if the top 1% is paying a tax rate over 70%, the economy does great. It actually did. Look it up if you want to, because I know I did. Because if you look it up and you look up economic history, you will see every year that we've actually done great as an economy. The rich got taxed. I think the highest the 1% have been taxed was 92%. So the rich are paying 92%. Incomes and incentives and tax breaks were given to the middle and lower class, and the economy surged. And when they turn, and then every Republican does this. Every Republican presidency does this. They reverse it. The rich pay less in taxes. Tax incentives and breaks are taken away from the middle and lower class. The economy tanks. It's not science, ladies and gentlemen. It's history. So when you look at universal basic income, and I'm just like this. Say, for instance, let's take the stimulus package. Let's say that you gave every American $1,500 every 2 weeks. So that means that every American gets $3,000, which at that point, if you're going by her and UC Berkeley's professor, that's $3 trillion. So you're telling me between the Pentagon's $2.7 trillion that they're getting and possibly another of the Department of Homeland Security, which is over $1 trillion, you're telling me that you don't have the means to give $3,000 to 250 plus million Americans? Come on now. And again, it's headed that way. That's the main thing I want to keep saying. Yes, Trace, it is globalism, because that's honestly where unregulated capitalism is headed. Unregulated capitalism is headed toward globalism, which is basically to the point to where, yes, a single corporation could wind up being the monopoly. It could, in theory. Now, would it happen? Probably not, but in theory it could happen. You're going to have to take the chip to get it. You got to explain that one, Trace. But pretty much, it's a wonderful subject. I would encourage you guys, if you don't know what universal basic income is, definitely look into it. I know my description was a little rough, but I still recommend those to actually look into it and really get a feel for it. Understand that this is probably where we're going to be going to in the near future. But again, education is power, so definitely be empowered about yourself. But the last piece of information before I get to our good news segment is pretty much going to be about health insurance, which is, again, another hotbed of, which will probably be another thing they're going to talk about during the campaigns, but here we go. And that's actually the truth. I mean, higher deductibles themselves are honestly getting to be astronomical numbers. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's because of my Obamacare. It's because of this. I was like, no, before you start, no, that's not it. I said it once and I'll say it again. All President Obama did was get the ACA introduced. The ACA is the Affordable Care Act, which basically, for all those that don't know what that means, it means that you're able to get health care coverage without literally being singled out for any pre-existing conditions. That's all that it means. That's all that it does. No insurance company can turn you away or make you pay more. If there's anything that President Obama will be held attention to, it will basically be just that. Now, Obamacare is pretty much the market for healthcare insurances. And I'm going to only say this once. Obamacare doesn't set the prices to your healthcare insurance. The healthcare companies do. I want you to understand that. The reason why is because healthcare, and I've said it before, healthcare as a profit is always the problem in medicine. Because Chris Rock said it best. There's no profit in cures. There's profit in maintenance. There's profit in pain. That's why you don't see a lot. I mean, that's why you see more medication for dick problems than you do for cancer. You'll see more medications for handling your diabetes versus having a cure for diabetes. For your, STDs you can't get rid of. You always see medications for that. For your insulin. Literally, we've seen stories of insulin prices skyrocketing for this drug that people have to have, otherwise they would die. Think about that for a second. So again, these healthcare companies are literally reaching profits. Trust me, if you look up the top 3 healthcare companies right now and you look at their CEOs and what they're making, it will blow your fucking mind. But at this point, the deductibles are getting so high now, thanks to Trump's tax plan, that folks are starting to not use their insurance because the deductibles. I mean, think about it. Who has enough? I mean, your deductible itself to go to your doctor might be $500. To go to a hospital is $1,000. To take an ambulance is $3,000. So it amazes me so that basically everything around us has better care than we do, and that's a screaming problem to the healthcare industry because there needs to be some regulation. There needs to be some pressing of these companies because they're making buku bucks off our pain. And I have been saying that for years. That's why I was sitting there saying, yes, it's always best to take care of yourself. And trust me, later on, I'll tell you about a buddy of mine who has a podcast who's all about that. But from a healthcare standard of America, they are pretty much running us ragged. And then once we get to that point where we can't take it no more, we go to the doctor and wind up, especially if you're having a baby, like some friends of mine and some siblings of mine are understanding. I'm like, having a baby in a hospital almost costs $10,000. I've seen the bill. $10,000 for your baby born. I see why a lot of people start sticking with home births now. But again, it's just one of those things that just eventually has to change. Like I said, I'll go into a lot more of it in the coming weeks just because as we get closer to election days. And like I said, if you want to chuckle at something, Google Simpsons and Trump. And like I said, they haven't been wrong about Trump yet. Hoping it doesn't happen to him. But again, the Simpsons really haven't been wrong. They've kind of been overseers. So again, guys, but we're going to go ahead and get into our good news segment. Because I like to do good news because, like I said, I know I throw a lot of things that are doom and gloom and just like hatred and things of that nature of just all those stories that just don't leave a good feeling. And I always like saying, it's the weekend. You should have a good feeling about everything. So that's the reason why, we want to do good news. Now, this one I'm about to show first, though. You know what? I always sit there and said about high school, and you always want to sit there and tell teachers off how you feel, especially during graduation. Well, this individual actually did it, and I'm kind of proud.
Gave what was possibly one of the most unusual graduation speeches. It started off pretty normally. Natalie thanked her parents, her friends, and some of her teachers for their support. Then things took an interesting turn. Take a look.
To my counselor, thanks for teaching me to fend for myself. You were always unavailable to my parents and I, despite appointments. You expressed to me your joy in knowing that one of your students was valedictorian when you had absolutely no role in my achievements. To the staff in the main office, thank you for teaching me how to be resourceful. Your negligence to inform me of several scholarships until the day before they were due potentially caused me to miss out on thousands of dollars.
The reaction from the students is like,
I know.
Wait a
Mouths
minute.
open, jaw dropping. When Natalie finished her speech, the crowd, though, clapped and cheered. She told our San Diego affiliate KFMB that she wanted to bring attention to what she felt was a lack of support for students. The school said it's unfortunate she decided to air her grievances, but her parents say, good job.
I think a lot of students have wanted to give that speech.
Yeah, as a parent,
what's the downside? You guys are
Right.
parents. What is the downside?
I'm going through it right now. It's tough getting folks engaged.
I love the fact that she just sat there and said what she wanted to say. For all those that didn't hear, she's talking about her high school guidance counselor that said, "Thank you for not helping me. Thank you for, I missed out. I missed out on scholarships that I could have gotten that could have helped me pay for college." And my teachers, who seemed to be a little bit drunk. I was like, when I first watched that video, I was like, that's all the shit I want to say at my graduation. I wasn't valedictorian, but hey, a brother can dream. But that does give me hope. And I said it before about the public education system. I'm a product of it. I lucked out because for a lot of my K through 12, I had great teachers. I had a lot of great teachers that basically made me the person I am. That being said, a lot of kids don't get that same experience. A lot of kids don't. They don't get those teachers that have an effect on them that they carry throughout their lives. And a lot of it could be the fact that, and I said it best about educators. I have said this and I will never stop saying this. Educators don't get paid enough. They do not. They do not get to literally, they are underpaid, overworked, overstuffed in classrooms. A lot of them are teaching subjects that they are not actually well versed in. At the same time, have to do a lot of raising of the kids because the parents themselves may or may not be involved or just decide that, hey, you're teachers, you can deal with it. Teachers are not upgraded babysitters. They are actually there to teach our children. And the thing about it is they are not given the tools to do so. And so therefore, I understand from a teacher standpoint, I understand from an educator standpoint, that the fact that you have one of the greatest professions next to 911 first responders, because you shape our youth, you shape our kids to move forward. You should be given all the tools that you need to succeed. And the thing about it is, education every year gets cut and cut and cut. Eventually it won't be nothing to cut from anymore. I should know our Metro School Board in Nashville just got rid of our director of public education. Why? Because he basically was a snake. He basically got paid for doing nothing, and they paid him his full salary just for him to leave. And the only people that are being affected by that are kids and the teachers. So I'll always be on the teacher's side. Teachers definitely need to get paid more and be given the tools that they need and should be given incentives to help them because they're the ones shaping our youth. And when you deduct public education, when you deduct classes and whatnot that are helpful, you see what happens when you see how that affects kids. You really do. So, but then again, I ain't mad at her because she sat there and said everything that needed to be said. But aside from that, moving on to our next, I know that was supposed to be a good news segment. I'm sorry, that was supposed to be a good news segment. I don't know how it almost went back. We were back to regular news. I apologize. But something else, Chobani, if you don't know who they are, Chobani is paying off $85,000 in lunch debt for an Ohio school district. Reason being because these students are graduating. Some of these students are actually graduating and probably were not allowed to graduate until the debt was covered off. So in this case, Chobani stepped in and actually paid the actual $85,000 for more than 900 students in the last school year. And the thing about it is, and the thing I think that bothers me about it it's just that, what about debt? I mean, what are we saying at this point? That debt is greater than education? Like, thank goodness for like Chobani, which makes great yogurt, by the way, because I've had it. Not saying it's an endorsement. I'm just saying you guys are like the cheapest thing in the store. So not saying that your product's not cheap. Your product's great, but I'm just saying, good yogurt. But at the same time, they're doing great things as far as, doing that to basically say, look, a debt shouldn't prevent a student from moving forward. Almost the same sense that, if they can do it, but it also screams a lot that our school district is more worried about the debt that a student has versus their actual education, and saying that, hey, until it's taken care of, you can't move forward. But again, kudos to Giovanni for actually doing that. Like I said, great yogurt, not an endorsement, but I'm just saying I do like it. Our last story that we have here is going to be this one, where again, it seems to be a teacher thing, where teacher who was actually who's also a teacher but also a part-time waitress basically got the tip of a lifetime, where it sit there and said they gave a $100 tip and said, thank you for teaching our kids. Thank you for teaching our kids. Teachers should not have to work weekends, and that says a lot. Honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong. You should always pay it forward. Pay it forward in every situation that you can, especially if you see teachers. And like I said, the fact that a teacher has, like I was saying before, the fact that a teacher has a secondary job tells you off the bat that it goes a long way as far as saying where we are in our educational world today. But again, it's always great to see people that just, like I said, pay it forward as far as letting teachers know that, hey, we know shit's rough, but we got you. And at the same time, this is a small token of our appreciation. So again, I can go on and on about, educators and how I should believe that, they should actually be given their due diligence. I could go into that. I don't really want to, but y'all see the point of where I'm making from that on that goes from. So with that being said, that's going to end our show for today. Thank you guys for all watching. We had quite a lot of people just pop up in here. So thank you for all that were commenting, and I'm pretty sure during the live review there will probably be other folks that will just come on here and want to commentate as well. I'm pretty sure about that. But before I go, some shameless plugging to get out the way. Like I said, you've probably seen Trace Brown pop through here. Trace Brown is actually a part of our group called Table of Bosses, in which he has a few podcasts of his own. He actually has The Bump Down. The Bump Down is a musical podcast where he goes over music. Crap. I forgot how it goes already. Music knowledge charts. Forgive me, Trace. I have completely skewed your call line. But music knowledge, charts, and numbers, I know Vaughn's going to love reading me for that one because I forgot it already. But anyway, he goes over what's hot on the charts and what's hot on the underground. Basically gives you his view of the music industry. And trust me, if you're a recording artist that is just trying to get your trying to get your music out there, or if you're just curious about how the music industry works, he does have his ear on the pulse of things and loves to talk about it. And also, if you're an aspiring artist that wants your music to be played, please look up DJ King Eddie Wayne on Facebook and on YouTube, and he'll get you the ditch on how to actually get your music submitted to him. He also has a Smoke of Truth, as I like to call it, the Check Your Ego at the Door, No Frills podcast, in which he's going to go over subjects, but he's going to give the truth. And the truth will piss you off, but it will set you free, and it's not for the faint of heart. So Smoke of Truth, definitely on that. You definitely want to look up DJ King and Wayne on Facebook to see the times and dates of when the Smoke of Truth and the Bump Down podcast will actually show. My other friend of mine, Thomas, as we like to call him, the Mountain Puncher, the man who's always beside me every Saturday in a tank top, and trust me, he will probably be in a tank top later today, has his own fitness podcast called To Be Determined. To Be Determined is basically a fitness podcast. Anybody that knows Thomas or seen the man that's usually with me in my podcast, he is a man that is all about fitness. He is a gym rat, one would say, but he also loves to share his knowledge about people, about what workouts could work for you, what workouts couldn't do, nutrition, basically give his personal testimony to let you know, hey, it's all about what you want to do, and your results are to be determined on that one. That'll be a little bit later today at 3 p.m. Central Time on Facebook Live. Look up Thomas Reed on Facebook to basically see when that happens. And also, last but certainly not least, our other brother, Big Vaughn, Big BZA Dot, has several podcasts of his own. He actually has the I Get That Reference VST, which is a short podcast over various news, videos, music, video games, things of that nature. Also very informative, interactive, just like my show. He actually has Rhythmness, which was just yesterday. What is Rhythmness? Rhythmness is basically a podcast that he goes over musical albums to a 4-tier rating system. If you want to know what that rating system is, you need to watch Rhythmness to find out. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our toes into to basically take a break from life and have a chuckle. Because sometimes he shows funny videos, sometimes he shows out there videos, sometimes you see videos of a lady sitting at Burger King that's on fire, but she won't leave the driver's window because she wants her change. Yes, that is an actual video. Again, it's all for good, all for jokes and laughs, just to make you think. Random as fuck as well, and all of those. If you look up Avon Weatherspoon on Facebook, he actually has a calendar to where all his podcasts will be live and showing, and both multi-streaming on Facebook, Mixer, and YouTube. And of course, with me, with How the Frack We Got Here, which is usually every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. And of course, my other podcast, which is Off Limits Podcast, where nothing is off limits, will actually be a little bit later today, as I hope to have a full house with myself and Thomas and Trace and Vaughn. Like I said, Off Limits, we just go to areas that nobody will go to as far as subject matter goes, but that'll be a little bit later today from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. Thanks, Trace. Music, culture, knowledge, numbers. I should know that by now. I'm sorry, Trace. I'm sorry, Trace, for screwing up your tagline. I apologize. And also, the Smoke of Truth. Did I say the Smoke of Truth? Oh, you're doing that one here. Okay, my bad. Oh, so I guess we're doing a Smoke of Truth here. Okay, cool. Never mind then. So there'll be a Smoke of Truth here as well. Okay, so aside from that, guys, we each of us do have our own YouTube pages. So if you look up DJ Kiki Wayne, Big B is the podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, and also the Off-Limits Podcast, all those are YouTube pages that are active. You can like, share, and subscribe, and be able to see every podcast that we've done so far. And also, if you look up our Facebook group, I Get That Reference, is actually a link to where to show all of our videos, which will eventually become our Table Bosses video vault. But you can still like, share, and subscribe, and be able to comment there as well. And also, with that being said, I do want to say about How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed. What does staying informed mean? Staying informed means that you are not taking everything at face value. That means that if it doesn't sound right, that you are taking the due diligence to go in and actually use the information that you have, the ways of information that you have at your fingertips to really search the truth, find the appropriate sources, and then once you found it, come back and show others what you have done in order to inspire them to do the same. Because an informed society can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed society, because an uninformed society got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So, with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and comment as normal, because I will see it, especially all you Trump supporters, because I know you will. Aside from that, guys, like I said, I've been Will. This has been the Off Limits. This has been the Off Limits. This has been the How the Frack We Got. I am so backwards. This has been the How the Frack We Got Here podcast. Off Limits will be coming up later today. To Be Determined also coming up later today. Smoke of Truth will be later today as well, guys, and hopefully we'll have a full house then. But until then, enjoy your Saturday wherever you're at. Peace.